Imagine standing in the middle of a silent desert night, the sky stretching endlessly above you, and the wind carrying whispers that don't sound entirely human. The land feels alive, almost watchful, and before you realize it, you are no longer just standing on soil, you are standing on one of the most mysterious, feared, and scientifically baffling pieces of land in the United States. This is Skinwalker Ranch, a place where reality bends, shadows move with intention, and the unknown steps dangerously close to the ordinary world. For decades, people have vanished here, animals have died in ways no predator could be responsible for, and witnesses have described creatures so unnatural that even experts refuse to categorize them. This is not just another ghost story. This is not just a legend passed down by native tribes. This land has been investigated by billionaires, government agencies, physicists, military researchers, and intelligence officers. And despite all the money, technology, and expertise thrown at it, Skinwalker Ranch refuses to give up its secrets. The story begins long before modern investigators arrived, long before cameras were set up around the property, and long before the United States existed as a nation. The Ute tribe, who have lived in this region for centuries, spoke of a dark curse on this land. They warned travelers to stay away from this area because it was home to beings that could walk between forms. According to their oral history, skinwalkers were shapeshifters, witches capable of wearing the bodies of animals or appearing in monstrous hybrid forms. These creatures were not symbolic or metaphorical. To the Ute people, they were real threats. They were described as malicious, fast, and cunning, capable of mimicking human voices, stalking from treetops, or moving silently across the desert without leaving tracks. The Utes believed that skinwalkers did not simply hunt life, they hunted souls. Centuries later, when settlers began moving westward, many reported supernatural events in this region without knowing the tribal legends. Strange lights floated above the ground. Dark figures appeared at night, watching from the hills. Horses panicked without explanation, and settlers often spoke of being followed by something they could hear but not see. Some described enormous wolves with glowing eyes that would not die even after being shot at point-blank range. Others reported strange machines in the sky, long before the modern idea of UFOs existed. In the 1990s, a family known as the Shermans bought the ranch, unaware of the terrifying reputation of the land. From the very first day, something felt wrong. There was a silence that didn't feel natural. The land felt hollow, as if hiding something beneath the surface. On their first week, they saw a massive wolf, larger than any they had ever encountered. It seemed calm, almost tame, but moments later, it attacked one of their calves. The father shot the wolf multiple times at close range. The bullets tore through flesh, but the creature didn't bleed. It didn't even flinch. Instead, it stared at them with cold intelligence before slowly walking away, unharmed. When they examined the area, the tracks simply ended. No blood, no trail, no explanation. That event was only the beginning. Over the next 2 years, the family experienced phenomena so bizarre, so physically impossible, that they struggled to put the events into words. They saw metallic discs hovering silently above the ranch. They heard voices speaking in unknown languages directly above their heads, even though the sky was empty. They found their cattle surgically mutilated with precision tools, organs removed, but with no blood anywhere. Veterinarians said no predator on Earth could have done this. The cuts were too clean, almost clinical. One night, the family saw a glowing blue orb floating across the field. It moved intelligently, darting close to the ground and then rising suddenly, reacting almost like it was aware of being watched. Their dogs chased the orb into the woods. Moments later, the family heard horrific screams. When they ran to help, they found nothing but 3 piles of burned, melted flesh where the dogs had been. The orb disappeared into the darkness, leaving no tracks, no evidence, only loss. That night, the Shermans decided they could no longer stay. The ranch was killing their animals, tearing apart their sanity and threatening their lives. Word of the ranch reached a billionaire named Robert Bigelow, founder of Bigelow Aerospace, who was fascinated by the possibility of extraterrestrial life and paranormal phenomena. He purchased the property and hired a team of scientists, physicists, biologists, and military researchers to study the ranch under a classified program known as NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science. These were not ghost hunters. These were government-level experts armed with some of the most advanced technology available at the time. From the first night, they realized the Shermans were telling the truth. They captured strange aerial phenomena that defied physics, objects moving at incredible speeds, changing direction instantly and vanishing in milliseconds. They saw portals opening, literal holes of light floating in midair, through which large, dark creatures seemed to crawl before disappearing again. They detected radiation spikes, electromagnetic fields, and heat signatures of invisible beings. But whenever they tried to record the activity with cameras or sensors, the equipment malfunctioned. Batteries drained instantly. Wires melted. Sometimes the devices simply vanished from secured positions as if plucked out of reality. Scientists who worked on the ranch later said it felt like the phenomena was intelligent. It reacted to them. It watched them. It avoided being captured, as if deliberately outsmarting their experiments. Some researchers reported being followed home by dark figures or experiencing strange activity even after leaving the ranch. One investigator saw a creature standing outside his home window hundreds of miles away, with glowing eyes staring at him in the night. And despite all the money, technology, and expertise thrown at it, Skinwalker Ranch refuses to give up its secrets.
After Bigelow's team left the ranch, the land seemed to fall into a strange, uneasy silence. But those who had studied the property knew something deeply unsettling. Skinwalker Ranch did not simply stop because researchers stopped watching. Whatever was there had been there long before humans arrived, and it would remain long after. The phenomena felt patient, as if waiting for the next group of people who dared to challenge it. For almost a decade, the ranch remained mostly quiet in the public eye. But behind the scenes, rumors continued to spread among former NIDS scientists. Some spoke privately about experiments they were not allowed to disclose. Others hinted that the U.S. government had quietly continued studying the ranch under classified programs. A few even suggested that the activity on the ranch could be connected to a much larger pattern of strange reports across the American Southwest. The silence finally broke in 2016 when a new owner entered the picture. Real estate magnate Brandon Fugel purchased the property with the goal of uncovering the truth using more advanced technology, larger teams, and stronger scientific methods. Many people assumed he bought the ranch as a publicity stunt, but Fugel was clear. He intended to continue the investigation in a serious, structured, and professional way. From the moment he took ownership, he and his team installed a massive network of cameras, motion detectors, radiation sensors, thermal scanners, and communication systems across the ranch. This setup was far more advanced than anything Bigelow's team had previously used. Yet what happened next shocked the team. Within weeks of installation, their equipment experienced the same inexplicable malfunctions that had plagued earlier researchers. Cameras that had been working for days suddenly shut off during moments of high activity. Hard drives corrupted themselves. Motion sensors detected invisible objects moving across fields. Radio interference spiked for no known reason, sometimes at levels that could harm humans. But the most disturbing part was how the team members themselves started feeling the effects. One investigator began having intense migraines whenever he approached a certain part of the property. Another experienced sudden nausea and confusion after observing a ball of light floating near the tree line. A security guard described feeling watched every night, even when he was alone, as if something was inches behind him, but whenever he turned around, nothing was there. The team soon realized this ranch doesn't just produce strange events, it interacts with people. It influences them, sometimes subtly and sometimes with frightening force. One of the most alarming events occurred when a team member noticed a strange, invisible disturbance above the ground on radar. The scanner showed a massive object floating in the sky, but no one could see it with the naked eye. It was 30 feet long, stationary, and radiating a heat signature that could not be detected visually. The object vanished moments later, leaving only data recordings and the uneasy feeling that something had been observing them from above. Then came the incident with the cow. One afternoon, a perfectly healthy cow suddenly collapsed and died while the team was monitoring it live. What made the event terrifying was not just the sudden death, it was the fact that 3 cameras pointing directly at the animal all failed at the exact second it died. The footage went black simultaneously, even though each device was powered from a separate system. When the cameras rebooted, the cow was already dead. No struggle, no predators, no wounds, just a lifeless body lying in the field. When the team reviewed radiation readings taken earlier that morning, they found a sharp, unexplained spike in the area where the cow had died. Whatever caused its death left no trace except a sudden malfunction of every camera directed at the event. Even more disturbing was the realization that the death happened while a group of small glowing orbs had been hovering near the ranch perimeter. These orbs had been seen on multiple occasions, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups. They moved with intelligence, darting away when approached and observing from a distance when left alone. Some witnesses described the orbs as curious, while others felt they were predatory, waiting for the right moment to act. But the ranch didn't only reveal strange airborne phenomena. The ground itself seemed alive with secrets. Several researchers reported hearing mechanical sounds beneath their feet, grinding, metallic echoes like heavy machinery operating deep underground. Ground-penetrating radar scans shocked the team when they revealed massive, perfectly shaped structures buried beneath the ranch. These structures were not natural. They had straight lines, right angles, and geometric formations that looked like tunnels or chambers. It appeared as if something or someone had built systems under the ranch long before modern technology existed. Whenever the team tried digging into the ground to investigate, something interfered. Radios jammed, instruments glitched. Team members suddenly felt dizzy or violently ill. One investigator suffered a dangerous medical emergency involving swelling in his skull, something doctors said could have been life-threatening if he had stayed at the ranch a few minutes longer. The moment he was rushed off the property, his symptoms began to fade. No one could explain it medically, as if the land itself rejected the intrusion, refusing to let humans unlock the secrets buried beneath. As the months passed, the team noticed a repeating pattern. The ranch responded to disruption. Digging triggered events. Scanning triggered events. Even talking openly about experiments seemed to provoke reactions. It was almost as though something intelligent was listening, watching, and adapting to every attempt at discovery. One night, while scanning the sky with infrared cameras, the team saw a dark void appear in the sky. A literal hole in the sky. This hole was visible only through the infrared spectrum. It looked like a tunnel or portal, opening and closing within seconds. Moments later, they recorded a massive creature, invisible to the naked eye, moving through the field. Its outline was captured by thermal cameras, showing a tall humanoid figure with elongated limbs. It moved quickly, silently, and seemed to study the team before disappearing into the night. This incident sparked new discussions among the researchers. Were the sightings of creatures connected to the ancient Skinwalker legends? Were these beings alien, dimensional, spiritual? The more evidence they collected, the more confusing the situation became. Each piece of data contradicted the next. For every strange light in the sky, there was a biological anomaly on the ground. For every eerie voice heard at night, there was a sudden equipment failure that followed. No single explanation was enough. The ranch behaved like multiple phenomena happening at once, all overlapping, all interacting, and all impossible to categorize. The team soon realized a chilling truth. Skinwalker Ranch was not hosting one type of anomaly. It was a convergence point, a crossroads, a place where different types of phenomena intersect, collide, and bleed into our world. Whether by curse, by science, or by something older than humanity, the ranch had become a gateway where the impossible becomes visible. But the more they explored, the more dangerous the ranch became. Something seemed to push back, making it clear that some secrets were not meant to be uncovered. And then came the night that changed everything. A night when the sky above the ranch opened wider than ever before. A night when the team witnessed something so extraordinary that it forced them to rethink everything they believed about the universe.
The night that would become one of the most shocking in the history of Skinwalker Ranch began quietly, almost unnaturally calm. The sky was a deep shade of black, unbroken by clouds or moonlight. The air felt heavy, as if it was charged with static, and even the animals on the ranch were strangely silent. The team had been monitoring unusual electromagnetic readings for hours, noticing that the sensors placed across the property were reacting to something in the atmosphere. But they didn't expect what would come next. Shortly after midnight, a sudden burst of energy surged across the ranch, causing every camera and motion detector to flash simultaneously. The team rushed outside, scanning the sky with night vision and thermal equipment. At first, everything looked normal. But then, one of the researchers aimed an infrared camera toward the western ridge and froze. On the screen, a massive oval-shaped distortion hung in the air about 50 feet above the ground. To the naked eye, it was invisible. But through the camera, it looked like a swirling tunnel made of dark, bending light. The team stared in disbelief as the distortion grew larger, stretching vertically as though something inside it was pushing outward. The edges rippled like water disturbed by a hand. Then, without warning, the center of the oval opened into a blinding flash of white light. For a moment, the sky seemed to tear apart. The brightness expanded, revealing what looked like a glowing landscape on the other side. Hills, rocks, and a strange bluish sky, completely different from the darkness surrounding the ranch. It lasted only a few seconds, but what stepped through the opening left the team paralyzed with fear. A large, dark figure emerged, outlined by the white glow behind it. It dropped into the field with a heavy thud, sending shockwaves across the ground. Through the infrared lens, the creature's body emitted almost no heat. It was tall, at least 7 feet, with long arms that nearly reached its knees. Its head was narrow, with pointed features and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. The creature looked around slowly, as if studying its surroundings. Then it took a step forward, moving with speed and grace that did not match its size. The team watched in stunned silence. None of them dared to speak. None of them dared to move. Every instinct in their body screamed at them to run, but their minds were frozen, locked in disbelief at what they were witnessing. The creature seemed to notice the infrared beam pointing at it. It turned its head sharply toward the camera's direction and stared directly into the lens. Even though the team couldn't see its true appearance, they could feel its gaze. It felt intelligent, aware, and dangerous. Suddenly, the creature sprinted across the field with impossible speed. It vanished behind a cluster of trees. The team ran toward the spot, but by the time they arrived, the creature was gone. No tracks, no heat signatures, nothing.
Only the lingering electromagnetic distortion remained in the air, making their equipment glitch and flicker. As they looked back toward the sky, the portal-like structure began to collapse in on itself. The blinding light shrank, the oval distortion tightened, and within seconds, the sky went completely dark. The night was silent again, as though nothing had happened. This event left the team shaken to the core. They had documented mutilated animals, orbs, UFOs, shadows, voices, and radiation spikes. But this was different. This was biological, physical. Something had come through a doorway in the sky. Something had crossed into our world, and the ranch had once again shown that it is capable of bending the laws of physics in ways that are far beyond human understanding. In the days that followed, the team noticed strange behavior across the ranch. Animals refused to enter certain areas. Cows gathered in tight groups as if trying to protect each other. Birds avoided flying over the property entirely. The team's own dogs became restless, pacing constantly, barking at empty corners and refusing to sleep. Some of the researchers reported nightmares, seeing dark figures standing over their beds, whispering in voices that weren't human. They woke up drenched in sweat, unsure if the dreams were psychological or caused by something else. One of the most disturbing incidents occurred when a researcher named Thomas found deep claw marks on the side of a metal container next to the command center. The marks were nearly an inch deep, carved into solid steel. Whatever made those marks had strength far beyond any known animal in Utah. When the team examined the tracks around the container, they found large footprints, too large to be human, with an elongated shape and 3 prominent toes. The tracks appeared suddenly, as if something materialized out of thin air. Then, after 10 steps, the prints simply stopped. No direction, no trail, no exit. As the team collected more evidence, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Creatures seen on the ranch did not behave like traditional animals. They appeared and disappeared, moved without leaving physical traces, and often seemed partially invisible to the naked eye. The scientists began to consider a radical possibility. What if these beings were not native to our dimension? What if the ranch sat on a fracture point in the fabric of space-time, allowing entities from somewhere or somewhen else to step through? This idea grew stronger when the team discovered unusual time anomalies. Watches stopped, phones reset themselves, hard drives captured timestamps that didn't align with real-world time. In one experiment, 2 synchronized atomic clocks placed on opposite sides of the ranch began drifting apart by several seconds, something that should be scientifically impossible. Time was behaving inconsistently on the property, as though warped or stretched by unseen forces. The deeper they explored these anomalies, the more they realized the ranch could not be explained by any single theory. It wasn't just paranormal. It wasn't just extraterrestrial. It wasn't just interdimensional. It was something far more complex, a place where multiple layers of reality seemed to overlap, creating a hotspot of impossible phenomena. But the land also had a darker side, one that seemed to specifically target those who probed too deeply. Several researchers suffered unexplained illnesses. One developed sudden burns on his skin, as if exposed to high radiation, despite wearing protective gear. Another lost consciousness after approaching the area where the creature had been seen. Doctors could not determine the cause. In some cases, injuries showed signs of high-energy exposure, but instruments detected nothing harmful. The most terrifying ordeal happened when a new team member spotted a glowing orb floating near the ridge. He attempted to follow it on foot, despite warnings from others. As he approached, the orb moved faster, leading him deeper into the property. Suddenly, the orb shot toward him with intense speed, stopping just inches from his face. The man collapsed instantly, screaming in agony. When the team reached him, he was disoriented, shaking uncontrollably and unable to speak. His skin had turned pale, and his heart rate was dangerously high. He was rushed to a hospital, where doctors said he showed signs of strong electromagnetic exposure, similar to someone standing near a high-powered microwave transmitter. After this event, the team began to understand that the phenomena on the ranch were not just unpredictable, they were potentially lethal. The ranch didn't just display strange events, it interacted with researchers, sometimes violently. It was almost as if the land itself was choosing who could witness its secrets and who would be punished for getting too close. Even more puzzling was how the ranch seemed to adapt over time. Cameras placed in one area would record nothing for days, then suddenly capture strange shadows or lights. When the team moved the equipment to the hotspot, the activity would vanish instantly. It was as though the phenomena were deliberately avoiding detection, staying one step ahead of every scientific attempt to track them. As the investigations continued, the team realized they were dealing with something that behaved like a living intelligence, not a random series of events, something that understood observation, something that reacted to attention, something that did not want to be understood. This realization led to one chilling question. If the phenomena on Skinwalker Ranch are intelligent, then what are they aware of? And more importantly, what do they want? The answer began to reveal itself during one of the most intense nights ever recorded on the ranch, an event that would bring together the worst aspects of everything the team had studied so far.
The night that would later be known as the Tri-Event Convergence began just after sunset, when the last life faded behind the rocky horizon of the Uinta Basin. At first, everything seemed calm, but the team had learned that on Skinwalker Ranch, silence was never a good sign. It was usually the quiet that came before something far more unsettling. Sensors buried across the property began to flicker with small fluctuations, tiny electromagnetic pulses, nothing major, but enough to signal that the environment was changing. It always started subtly, like the ranch was taking a slow breath before exhaling chaos. Around 10 p.m., the first anomaly appeared. A low vibration rippled across the ground, strong enough that the team inside the command center felt their chairs tremble. Outside, animals began to behave strangely. Cows clustered together near the fence line, pressing tightly against each other as if trying to shield themselves. The ranch dogs growled at the open field, refusing to step into the darkness. Even the insects had fallen silent, leaving the entire landscape eerily still. Minutes later, the sky above the central field lit up with a deep, pulsating red glow. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't an aircraft. It was a perfect circular shape forming high in the air, slowly rotating, casting an unnatural light across the land. The color shifted from red to orange, then to a strange metallic gold. It looked like a massive eye staring down at the ranch, watching everyone below. As the team aimed cameras toward the sky, their equipment began to malfunction one by one. Screens froze, batteries drained instantly, audio systems filled with static. The ranch was shutting down their technology before they could record what was happening. Then the second event struck the ground, literally. A deafening boom echoed from the eastern field as the earth beneath them heaved like a wave. The soil cracked open for several seconds, creating a long, jagged line that stretched nearly 100 feet. Dust billowed into the air as the ground rumbled, and within the darkness of the newly formed crack, the team heard something they would never forget. A deep, mechanical humming, rhythmic and metallic, as if enormous machines were operating far beneath their feet. The sound didn't fit with any natural geological activity. It was too consistent, too engineered. The ground shook again, this time more violently, and the humming grew louder. The ranch felt alive, like something beneath the surface was waking up. The team scrambled to check seismic sensors, but the readings did not make sense. The tremors did not match the patterns of an earthquake. Instead, they looked like timed pulses, synchronized in a repeating pattern, almost like signals being transmitted from underground. As the earth pulsed below them and the glowing circle rotated above them, the third event began in the western field, where the team's infrared cameras picked up movement near the tree line. At first, it seemed like a large animal, something massive, low to the ground, moving with a slow dragging motion. But as the team zoomed in, they realized there was more than one. Several dark shapes emerged from the shadows, their bodies tall and distorted, their limbs unnaturally long. They walked upright, but their movements were jerky, as if their joints bent in ways that didn't follow human anatomy. What made the scene more terrifying was that the creatures were only visible through infrared. To the naked eye, the field looked completely empty, but through the thermal lenses, it was crawling with entities that emitted almost no heat, forming ghost-like silhouettes that watched the team silently from a distance. The creatures stood still for several minutes, facing the command center as if waiting for something to happen. Then, slowly, they began to spread out, forming a semicircle around the edges of the field, encircling the researchers without ever taking a step toward them. The team suddenly felt overcome with an overwhelming sense of dread, an instinctive fear that seemed to press against their minds. Some described it as a feeling of being hunted. Others felt like they were being scanned, as if their thoughts were being examined. One member began shaking uncontrollably, unable to speak. Another felt as though the air around him had become thick, making it harder to breathe. The ranch had shown many frightening events over the years, but never had the phenomena coordinated so intensely, sky, ground, and creatures all acting at once. Then the glowing circle in the sky began to expand rapidly, growing larger until it stretched nearly half the width of the field. Inside the circle, swirling patterns formed, like storm clouds folding inward on themselves. The light became so intense that it cast long shadows across the landscape. Suddenly, the entire ranch was bathed in a strange golden glow, illuminating everything, including the creatures that moments before were only visible through infrared. For the first time, the team could see their outlines without any equipment. The shapes were tall, thin, and twisted, their bodies slightly translucent like they weren't fully solid. Their faces were elongated, with deep-set eyes that reflected the glowing sky. The creatures did not attack. They did not run. They simply watched, as if waiting for the next part of the event to unfold. Beneath their feet, the ground pulsed again, and this time the mechanical humming grew so loud that the air itself vibrated. Some of the researchers covered their ears, trying to block out the overwhelming noise. Others stared helplessly as their equipment sparked and died. The ranch had shut down their technology before they could record what was happening. Then the glowing circle in the sky began to tear open like a rip in a sheet of fabric. A vertical crack formed in the center, revealing a blinding white void behind it. The air buzzed with electricity, and the temperature dropped so quickly that the team could see their breath. Winds spiraled upward from the ground, pulling dust and debris into the swirling opening above. The portal, or whatever it was, seemed to draw energy from everything around it, including the ranch itself. From the center of the opening, something enormous began to take shape. A massive silhouette emerged within the blinding white light. It appeared to be floating, its form unclear, as though it existed partially out of phase with the world around it. The outline grew larger, spanning nearly the width of the glowing circle. The team could feel a pressure building in the air, like the atmosphere was straining to hold something back. Just as the form began to solidify, the ground erupted with a violent shockwave that knocked several researchers to the ground. The glowing circle flashed one final time, so bright that it turned the entire night into day, and then collapsed in on itself with a thunderous crack. The creatures in the field vanished instantly, the mechanical humming stopped, and the ground fell silent. And within seconds, the sky returned to normal darkness, as if the entire event had been erased from reality. But the aftermath proved that it had been real. Birds lay motionless on the ground, stunned but alive. The cattle were trembling in fear, huddled tightly against fences. The newly formed crack in the earth still vibrated faintly, emitting small bursts of electromagnetic energy. And the team, shaken and exhausted, realized they had just witnessed something unprecedented, a synchronized, multi-layered phenomenon that defied every known law of nature. In the following days, the ranch remained strangely quiet.
No lights, no noises, no anomalies, almost as if whatever force controlled the land had exhausted itself. But the team couldn't forget what they saw. They couldn't ignore the feeling that something had almost crossed through that massive opening in the sky. Something far larger, far more powerful, and far more aware than anything they had encountered before. And they were left with one haunting question. If the ranch was capable of such an event once, what would happen when it happened again? The answer began to reveal itself during one of the most intense nights ever recorded on the ranch, an event that would bring together the worst aspects of everything the team had studied so far. The night that the sky, the ground, and the very air around them seemed to erupt at once, showing a level of activity none of them had imagined possible.
The deeper you go into the story of Skinwalker Ranch, the more the boundaries between reality and nightmare start to blur. And as researchers pushed forward into the ranch's darkest corners, they discovered something far more terrifying than simple hauntings or UFO sightings. They found a pattern, an intelligent design behind the chaos. Something on this land was not just appearing randomly, it was choosing moments. It was choosing people, and more importantly, it was responding. As night settled over the ranch, the team grew accustomed to the uneasy quiet that came before an event. It was always the same, the wind cutting off without warning, the animals falling silent, and the unmistakable feeling that the ranch was watching. Many described it like standing on a stage in front of an invisible audience. The darkness wasn't empty, it was filled with eyes. On one of those quiet nights, a member of the security team was patrolling the western gate, an area known internally as the corridor. This stretch of land was notorious for distortions, devices failing, radios crackling, and strange lights flickering between the trees. The man was experienced, trained, and familiar with the ranch, but he wasn't prepared for what happened next. He noticed a large, dark mass emerging from the tree line. At first, he thought it was a cow, but as it stepped into the moonlight, he realized it towered over him, standing easily 7 feet tall. Its body was muscular and covered with coarse black hair. Its arms were long, and its eyes reflected a metallic yellow glow. Every instinct in him screamed to run, but his body froze. The creature stared at him for several seconds, long enough for him to feel the weight of its intent, before it turned and vanished back into the woods without a sound. The next morning, the team found tracks in the soft dirt. They were deep, wide, and shaped like a wolf's paw, but nearly 3 times the size. Whatever he saw that night, he was not alone. The ranch had shown him one of its guardians, or prisoners. As terrifying as these creatures were, the more disturbing events weren't the ones you could see, they were the ones you could feel. One researcher reported waking up in the middle of the night with a crushing pressure on his chest. He tried to move, but his arms wouldn't respond. His legs were locked. He could breathe, but only in shallow, panicked gasps. It felt as though something was sitting on him, observing him while he lay helpless. When his body finally responded, he shot upright and looked around the room. Nothing. But when he stepped outside to get fresh air, he noticed his dog staring into the darkness, tail tucked, growling low. Whatever visited him that night wasn't a dream, and whatever it was, his dog sensed it too. The team's drones also began picking up strange thermal signatures, humanoid shapes that would appear for moments and then disappear. They moved too quickly to be human, yet too precisely to be animals. And they were almost always spotted near the center of the ranch, an area the team referred to as the heart, a circular patch of land where no grass grew and compasses spun in circles. Some believed this area was the focal point of the ranch's energy, like a gateway or a thin place where dimensions overlapped. Others thought it was a wound, a scar created by something ancient and violent. Whatever its origin, the heart of the ranch pulsed with activity. One evening, as the team set up near the heart, their equipment began malfunctioning. Batteries drained instantly, lights flickered, radar systems glitched, and then a high-pitched ringing filled the air. It wasn't coming from their devices, it was coming from the ground itself. The team stepped back as a faint glow began rising from the soil, forming a circular outline that pulsed like a heartbeat. The glow grew brighter, and for a moment, just a moment, they swore they saw something inside it. A shape, a silhouette, a tall, thin figure standing motionless in the center of the light. But before they could react, the glow collapsed into darkness, the figure vanished, and the ringing stopped. From that night onward, the team's behavior began to change. Some grew paranoid, others fell sick without explanation. One researcher started hearing whispers when he was alone. Another felt like someone was following him everywhere he went, even off the ranch. And more disturbingly, several team members reported vivid nightmares of the same entity, a towering shadow with elongated limbs and featureless face standing above them as they slept. It didn't speak, it didn't move, it only watched. One researcher eventually broke down and admitted he felt the ranch studying him, learning him, like something was peeling him apart layer by layer. He asked to be reassigned. He never returned. Yet, even with all this fear, the team pushed forward. They believed answers were within reach. They believed the ranch was finally revealing its purpose, but the truth was far more complicated. And the events that followed would prove that whatever controlled Skinwalker Ranch was not done with them, it was only getting started. The team soon realized that they weren't just investigating the ranch, they were part of the experiment.
The activity on Skinwalker Ranch was intensifying in ways no one expected. What began as isolated, unpredictable events had now transformed into a chain of interactions, something intelligent, something aware, something responding directly to the researchers. The team started to realize they were no longer just documenting the phenomenon. They were part of the phenomenon. Night after night, strange lights floated over the distant tree lines, blinking in patterns that resembled communication signals. Sometimes they hovered so low that the ground beneath them glowed faintly. Animals refused to graze in areas where the lights appeared, and birds stopped flying over the ranch altogether. The ranch behaved like a living organism, and it was changing with every passing day. One experiment that pushed the investigation to a new level involved a weather balloon equipped with cameras, sensors, and GPS tracking. It ascended normally into the sky. Data streamed in clean and steady. But at around 1,500 feet, everything changed. The sensors began receiving impossible readings. Gravity shifted, electromagnetic fields surged, and the GPS locked in one position even though the balloon continued rising. Then, the camera went white. A sheet of white light swallowed the feed. When it returned, the cable was cut clean, as if sliced by an invisible blade. The balloon was gone forever, as if the sky had consumed it. Meanwhile, objects started disappearing from the ranch with increasing frequency. Small tools vanished from tables. Flashlights disappeared from pockets. Even sealed containers went missing. A metal research case weighing nearly 30 pounds vanished while being recorded on video. On playback, it simply blinked out of existence between two frames. The team struggled to accept it, but there was only one explanation. Something on the ranch was manipulating physical space, bending it or altering it. But the most shocking event came one cold afternoon. A team member saw a shimmering distortion in the air, about 50 feet away. It looked like heat waves rising from asphalt, but the temperature was freezing. The distortion stretched upward into an oval shape, like a doorway made of liquid glass. Through it, he saw a different landscape: red sky, jagged black terrain, and tall, thin silhouettes moving across the horizon. The vision lasted a single second before the distortion snapped closed and vanished. The experience left him trembling, convinced he had glimpsed another world entirely. Soon, the ranch began affecting the researchers' personal lives. One scientist noticed appliances malfunctioning inside his home miles away. Lights flickered every night. The air felt heavy, charged. One evening, he saw a tall shadow figure standing quietly in his hallway. When he stood up, the figure disappeared, leaving only a rush of cold air sweeping past his shoulder. Another investigator's children began waking up screaming, claiming a tall man with no face stood near their bedroom door at night. Their descriptions matched the dark humanoid figures seen on the ranch. The implication was horrifying. Whatever haunted the ranch was no longer confined to its borders. To better understand what they were dealing with, the team built a layered, shielded room designed to block electromagnetic interference. 2 men volunteered to sit inside, while the others monitored from outside. For 20 minutes, everything was calm. Then the temperature plummeted. One man felt pressure on his back, like a hand pressing hard between his shoulders. The other heard heavy breathing circling them. The sensors outside detected nothing. No movement, no heat signatures, no sound. Suddenly, both men panicked. They rushed to the door, shouting for it to be opened. When finally out, they described the same thing, an invisible presence moving around them, studying them, closing in until the air felt suffocating. Neither man agreed to enter the room again. The ranch was escalating. Every test triggered new and unpredictable reactions. Every discovery raised darker questions, and a terrifying theory began spreading among the team. What if nothing on the ranch was reacting to their presence? What if everything happening was part of a decades-long pattern and they had simply walked into its next phase? Some believed the ranch was trying to communicate. Others believed it was warning them. A few whispered something far worse, that the ranch wasn't reacting at all. It was controlling the pace of discovery, controlling what they saw, controlling what they believed. The team pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth. But none of them realized that the final layer of the Skinwalker Ranch mystery was something so enormous, so unsettling, that it challenged the very foundation of reality itself. The answers waiting for them would reshape everything they thought they knew about the universe. And they were about to find out that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again.